Doing this video for all of you people who are out there claiming Obama did this and Obama did that, and how the right wing loved to go after Susan Rice, okay? And I am 100% happy about the fact that she did this interview with Andrea Mitchell. Now I'm going to play the whole interview with her, and then I'm going to make my comments at the very end.
And good day. I'm Andrea Mitchell in Washington, where the Trump White House is pouncing on a report accusing former Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice of unmasking Americans whose communications were picked up through incidental collection by government intelligence agencies. The basic charge, political spying. Susan Rice joins me exclusively for her first public comments on these news stories.
Hi, Andrea. Good to be with you.
Good to see you. This is a firestorm. It is involved with the whole question of the Russia investigation, of the response by President Trump, and now these accusations against you. How do you reply? How do you respond?
Well, Andrea, this is not anything political has been alleged. The allegation is that somehow Obama administration officials utilized intelligence for political purposes. That's absolutely false. Let me explain how this works. I was a national security advisor. My job is to protect the American people and the security of our country. That's the same as the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the CIA director, and every morning to enable us to do that, we receive from the intelligence community a compilation of intelligence reports that the IC, the intelligence community, has selected for us on a daily basis to give us the best information as to what's going on around the world. I received those reports, as did each of those other officials, and there were occasions when I would receive a report in which a U.S. person was referred to, name not provided, just U.S. person. And sometimes in that context, in order to understand the importance of the report and assess its significance, it was necessary to find out or request the information as to who that U.S. official was. Let me give you just a hypothetical example. This is completely made up, but let's say there was a conversation between two foreigners about a conversation they were having with an American who was proposing to sell to them high-tech bomb-making equipment. Now, if that came to me as National Security Advisor, it would matter enormously. Is this some kook sitting in his living room communicating via the internet offering to sell something he doesn't have? Or is this a serious person or company or entity with the ability to provide that technology, perhaps to an adversary? That would be an example of a case where knowing who the U.S. person was necessary to assess the information. So when that occurred, what I would do, or what any official would do, is to ask their briefer whether the intelligence community would go through its process, and there's a long-standing established process, to decide whether that information as to who the identity of the U.S. person was could be provided to me. So they'd take that question back, they'd put it through a process, and the intelligence community made the determination as to whether or not the identity of that American individual could be provided to me. That is what I and Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, CIA Director, DNI would do when we receive that information. We only do it to protect the American people, to do our jobs in the national security realm. That's the only reason.
Within that process and within the context of the Trump campaign, the Trump transition, did you seek the names of people involved in, to unmask the names of people involved in the Trump transition, the Trump campaign, people surrounding the president-elect,
let me be clear,
in order to spy on them, in order to expose them?
Absolutely not for any political purposes, to spy, expose, anything. But
Did you leak the name of Mike Flynn?
I leaked nothing to nobody, and never have and never would. But let me explain this. First of all, Andrea, to talk about the contents of a classified report, to talk about the individuals on the foreign side who were the targets of the report itself, or any Americans who may have been collected upon incidentally, is to disclose classified information. I'm not going to do that. And those people who are putting these stories out are doing just that. I can't describe any particular report I saw, and by the way, I have no idea what reports are allegedly are being described by those who are putting out this story. I don't know what time frame they were from. I don't know the subject matter, and I don't know who they think was collected upon.
The allegation is that in one case they are alleging in the Daily Caller that there was a spreadsheet that you put out of all of these names.
Absolutely false.
And circulated.
No spreadsheet, nothing of the sort. And let me also elaborate and say that when the intelligence community...
Sorry about that, folks. I hit a button on my remote. But anyway, regarding the Daily Caller, that is a right-wing rag that just throws crap out there, and they never have any, and I do mean never have any information or evidence of the claims that they make. Now, they put on their rag that Rice ordered spies to produce detailed spreadsheets. If she did, where the hell are the spreadsheets? Okay, and I don't want to hear that bullshit about somebody told me that she made a spreadsheet. They need to actually see these spreadsheets or have a credible person who worked in the intelligence community step forward and make that claim. So other than that, you know, in my mind, all that is just alternative facts that they're throwing out there, trying to drum up, you know, the backing that they get from all of their right-wing nuts. Anyway, okay, here's the rest of the interview.
Spreadsheet, nothing of the sort. And let me also elaborate and say that when the intelligence community would respond to a request from a senior national security official for the identity of an American, that would come back only to the person who requested it. And it would be brought back to them directly.
To you directly?
To me or to whoever might have requested it on occasion, and this is, you know, important. It was not then typically broadly disseminated throughout the national security community or the government. So the notion that, which some people are trying to suggest, that by asking for the identity of an American person, that is the same as leaking it, is completely false. There's no equivalence between so-called unmasking and leaking. The effort to ask for the identity of an American citizen is necessary to understand the importance of an intelligence report in some instances.
Now, the House Chairman, Devin Nunes, said that the incidental collection of these names that he was briefed when he came to the White House in the complex of offices that you used to lead at the National Security Council, he said that it had nothing to do with the Russia investigation. Yet now the allegation is that you were responsible for leaking the fact that Mike Flynn had talked to Ambassador Kislyak and perhaps to others. Is there any truth to that?
I can't get into any specific reports. I don't know what Devin Nunes reviewed at the White House. What I can say is that there is an established process for senior national security officials to ask for the identity of U.S. persons in these reports. To get beyond that, Andrea, is to disclose classified information, and those people who are doing that are doing something very wrong.
Did the pace accelerate during the transition, perhaps in early December, perhaps when the president ordered an investigation into the hacking, the Russian hacking? Did the pace of unmasking requests, of your unmasking requests, accelerate toward the end of the White House tenure?
And I can't say the pace of unmasking requests would accelerate, but if you're asking were there more reports provided to senior U.S. officials after the president requested the compilation of the intelligence, which was ultimately provided in January, yes. What happened was, as the IC went about the business,
the intelligence community went about the business of following up on the president's order,
fulfilling the president's request for such a report. They went back and scrubbed more reports. They began to provide more such reports to American officials, including myself.
And did you make more requests to find the identity of Americans who had been picked up in incidental collection? I'm not asking you the substance, which I know work is classified, but were there more instances where at the tail end of the administration that you had to make, that you felt you had to make those requests to follow up on the raw data you were looking at?
Andrea, I really can't be particular about the pace, because understand that over 8 years, for me and others who served, it was not uncommon. In fact, it was necessary at times to make those requests to find out the identity of U.S. officials on every topic under the sun when it seemed relevant. I don't have a particular recollection of doing that more frequently after the election, for example, than doing so before.
Was there a particular focus on Russia because of the conversations with the Russian ambassador, because of the expulsion, around the time of the expulsion, December 26th, the decision to sanction Russia and expel a large number of alleged spies or diplomats?
Well, Andrea, from basically August through the end of the administration, we were hearing more and more, getting more and more information about Russian interference in our electoral process. It was of grave concern to all of us in the national security team of the president and the president himself. So we took this issue very seriously. We thought it was crucial to defend the integrity of our election process and to be able to respond appropriately to what the Russians did, to understand the full extent of their involvement. So yes, there was a pace of reporting that accelerated as the intelligence community got more and more information on that and shared it with U.S. officials. I don't recall with any precision the volume as it may have peaked or spiked at different stages, but I can say that from when this first came to light in intelligence channels to when the administration ended, we got more and more information.
Was there suspicion about Michael Flynn?
Andrea, I don't want to talk about any individuals. I spent hours with Michael Flynn during the transition, as was my responsibility, to try to provide him and other members of the Trump transition team with the best possible briefings I could as to what they needed to do to hit the ground running. We had very civil and cordial interactions, and he conducted himself professionally, and I did the same. So I don't want to get into concern about any particular individuals. Again, I think that would be crossing a line.
Did you know at the time that he was an unregistered agent for the Turkish government?
No.
When did you learn that?
In the press, as everybody else did.
You didn't know that when you were National Security Advisor? Is there any truth to President Trump's claim on Twitter exactly a month ago, early one Saturday morning on March 4th, that President Obama was eavesdropping on him at Trump Tower?
Absolutely false. And the intelligence community, the director of the FBI, has made that very clear. There was no such collection, surveillance on Trump Tower or Trump individuals. And it's very important to understand, by that I mean directed by the White House or targeted at Trump individuals. And it's important for everybody to understand the President of the United States and people in the White House do not have the ability to order such collection. That can only come from the Justice Department through an established process. It never originates in the White House. So not only did it not occur, it didn't occur, and it couldn't have occurred directed by the White House.
At the same time, the president, his associates, their names could have been bandied about by foreign officials. They could have been picked up in incidental collections.
Yes, they could have. That is possible.
And you could have asked for those names of American number 1, American number 2, however it's identified, to be unmasked so you would know how significant it was.
That's exactly right, Andrea. The fact is, whether we're talking about Russia or any other topic, if I saw an intelligence report that looked potentially significant, and by definition, if it's being provided to me, it is significant. I don't solicit reports. I only receive what the intelligence community thinks I or any other senior official needs to see. So they're giving it to me. If I read it and I think, in order for me to really understand, is this significant or not so significant, I need to understand who the U.S. person is, I can make that request. The intelligence community then process that request through their normal procedures, and if they feel they can give the answer, they will give the answer. That just comes back to me, not to anybody broadly in the national security world, and that's necessary for me to do my job. It's necessary for the Secretary of State or the Secretary of Defense or the CIA director to do their jobs. We can't be passive consumers of this information and do our jobs effectively to protect the American people. Imagine if we saw something of grave significance that involved Russia or China or anybody else, interfering in our political process, and we needed to understand the significance of that. For us not to try to understand it would be dereliction of duty.
What did you first think when the president tweeted that President Obama had eavesdropped on him?
I was surprised. I was shocked. I think many people were. That's a very serious allegation. It had no basis in fact, and it wasn't typical of the way presidents treat their predecessors, and it's not indicative of the tone and the collaboration that we sought to achieve during the transition.
There have been Republican responses now today. Senator Tom Cotton on the Hugh Hewitt show called you the typhoid Mary of the Obama White House. Your response to that?
You know, I've been called a lot of things by folks on the right that are unfair and disingenuous. This is not the first, so I'm not going to get into each individual allegation or moniker that some might apply to me.
Rand Paul is suggesting that you be subpoenaed to testify. Would you be willing to go to Capitol Hill?
You know, Andrea, let's see what comes. I'm not going to, sit here and prejudge. But what I will say is that the investigations that are underway as to the Russian involvement in our electoral process are very important. They're very serious. And every American ought to have an interest in those investigations going wherever the evidence indicates they should. And I have an interest in that as an American citizen. As a former U.S. official, I would want to be helpful in that process if I could.
Do you regret that the Obama White House did not decide earlier to blow the whistle on the Russians before the election?
We did blow the whistle on the
October
Russians
7th.
on October 7th, and that came as soon as the intelligence community and all of its component parts, 17 agencies, came to a consensus conclusion that we took the extraordinary step of making public that the Russian government at the highest levels was involved in an effort to play in our electoral process. That information was put out to the American people in a statement from the Director of National Intelligence and the Secretary of Homeland Security. Very unusual act designed to put on notice the American people, the secretaries of our 50 states, whose responsibility it is to protect the integrity of our electoral infrastructure, and to members of Congress who had been previously briefed as well on the import of this. So we did, in fact, put that information out as early as we had that consensus view with confidence, high confidence, and that was necessary and the right thing to do.
Do you know how President Obama feels about the accusation that he eavesdropped?
I haven't had that conversation with him.
And finally, do you think we'll ever get to the bottom of the Russian hacking?
I think we have to, Andrea. This is something very, very serious. A hostile government inserted itself into our electoral process in a significant way, in doing so with biased intent, and that's the conclusion of our intelligence agencies. We also know they're meddling in elections in Europe among our close allies. It's important that the American people understand this, and it's important that we improve our defenses against this kind of effort in the future, because if we don't, we should well assume that they will continue to try to do so.
Susan Rice, thank you very much.
All right, so that's the interview. Now, I'm calling bullshit on the Daily Caller and this piece of crap person who calls himself a reporter by the name of Richard Pollock, okay? He's the one that wrote the story that's in the Daily Caller. Now, he is quoting a person by the name of, I believe it's, give me a second. He's quoting a person, I believe it's, his last name is Genova, I believe it is. Give me one sec. Sorry about that, folks. He's quoting a guy by the name of Joseph D. Genova, okay? This guy he's damn near 70 years old, and he was a former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia from 1983 to 1988, okay? As far as what his position was in the government, I guess under the Obama administration, I'm not 100% sure of other than the fact that he did not work in the intelligence community, of which Susan Rice would have gotten the information directly. So how the hell does he know what she was doing when he didn't even work with her? Okay? This, again, is a bunch of, and it looks like his wife has also been fairly active as far as the Republican Party is concerned. She's also an attorney. So unless this guy can come up and show me some spreadsheets or provide me with some tape or some other evidence other than his word, and he specifically is going to ask me how he came by the knowledge of Mrs. Rice requesting the actual spreadsheets to be generated for her, because as she stated here, that just didn't happen. So now the shoe or the ball is in you guys' court, all you guys that are accusing Susan Rice of doing this stuff. Show me the money, provide me the proof.